Good morning. So often I've stood here and said it was another beautiful New England morning. I am the Reverend Susan Milner. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and it is my honor and my pleasure to serve as interim minister to this congregation in any weather. We gratefully acknowledge the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today. We commit to support and honor their history and their culture. On this chilly morning, gloomy morning, we really welcome all of you and hope you feel the warmth of the fact that we are so glad that you are here, members, friends, newcomers, visitors, whoever you are, wherever you are. Wherever you might be here, we want you, if possible, to feel part of this congregation, at least for this hour, and to respond to any questions that you might have. Everyone is invited to the coffee hour after this service, a time of fellowship and conversation, and of course, something to eat and drink. You can get there through these doors, through the parlor, and then down to the end of the hall. When you go to coffee hour, if you're visiting with us and you're willing, take a red mug, and we will be able to identify you and offer you a particularly warm, we hope, First Parish greeting. And everybody else help us to do that. I have a few announcements today. Well, actually, the first one is from Carrie Myers. Carrie, would you come forward and make your announcement?
Good morning. I am asking you, please, to ask your Massachusetts representatives to support the passage of the Indigenous Legislative Agenda. During coffee hour, I will have letters, stamps, envelopes, and addresses for you to use. These acts relate to education, Indigenous Peoples Day, and protection of Native heritage. I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Your transition team and I have a request in a moment, but first, we wanted to make sure that you know who the members of the transition team are. They are not all here today, but I would like to tell you who they are, and those who are present, if you would just stand when I call your name. Caroline Mitchell, I know you're here, so are you. Liz Connors, she's back there. Amy Hamilton, Amy. Meredith Lehman, is Meredith here today? P.J. Simeon, I know he's out of town, and Pat Schlichter. There she is. Thank you. This is your transition team, and any questions you want to ask them about ministerial transition, they will be glad to try to answer or to put me on. As our next step in the transition process, we're looking at who the congregation has been, and we want to get some input from you on that, so they will be in coffee hour, a couple of them today, with forms that we're asking you to fill out about some important events and challenges for the congregation in the time that you have been here. You can either do it there, or you can take it with you and return it next week. We're going to have these available for about 3 weeks, and we really hope you will give us your input. And then a final announcement. Reverend Rob Kinslow was scheduled this morning to do another session of magic with our young people. Rob called me early. His car had just died in the middle of the highway somewhere between his home in Vermont and here. And he will not be able to be here today. He will make this session up, but we have an alternate activity for the young people today. And so, because we had planned with that we wanted to give them plenty of time with Rob, they are now going to go downstairs, and we will sing them out to Go Now in Peace. spiritual community, above all, must be a place that people can bring their life challenges, their celebrations, their joys, their concerns. Sometimes we share those aloud, and sometimes we move into a more meditative space where people can light a candle silently for a joy or a concern that they are carrying. This is one of those moments. And so I invite you, as Ed plays, to come forward if you would like to for your own silent recognition. And one candle for those that go unlit this morning, but the people in this congregation or those you love are carrying, dealing with, and we offer our thoughts and hold them in the light. I would invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love. The person who wrote the words to this was a Unitarian Universalist. Her daughter happened to be a member of a congregation I served in. I know that Carolyn Hart, in her life, spent a lot of energy dedicated to women's rights, to lots of other issues of justice and peace. Please be seated. I invite you into a spirit of quiet prayer, meditation, intention. Spirit of life and love, light within and without, mystery from which we have all emerged, within which we live and die. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and stillness at the center of our being. As people of faith, we seek to live in a spirit of love, a spirit of community, justice, and peace. And yet in so many corners of the world, both far and near, we see divisiveness and hate. If we look deep within ourselves, perhaps we will even find those shadow energies there too at times. We struggle to respond to the outer world and our inner dramas in ways that manifest love. At times we may fear that our love will not be strong enough. At times we may question whether love is really at the root of all things in this world with so much struggle and suffering and discord. We may struggle to hold on to our faith in love, knowing that if all things come from one source, as we proclaim, that source must somehow hold hate as well as love, violence as well as peace, evil as well as good. This is the mystery within which we live and die. These are the questions that haunt our days and nights, and yet we are not without hope. Our struggles and our questions testify to our longings for peace, for love. Our very longings are born out of that mystery we dare to address as the spirit of life and love. In the stillness and silence of our own heart, we read the imprint of love, created not by our own will, but there for us to discover. A clue, a talisman, a beacon, a light within. May it keep hope alive even as we dwell in mystery. May it guide us all as we seek to act wisely and well. May it help us to be vessels of compassion for one another and for our world. And in that spirit, let us enter into the silence. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. During this moment of offering in the service every week, as you know, I like to lift up appreciation, lift up something, someone, some effort in appreciation, because what all that everyone gives in this congregation to keep its ministries going, to reach out to people, to comfort, to touch, to inspire, all of those are part of the generosity that it takes to create a spiritual community. This morning I also want to offer appreciation for the work of the staff members of First Parish Church Unitarian Universalist here in Duxbury. I know that I certainly rely on all of those staff members every week. I know that you who are seated here do as well, and I know from long experience that most people work in congregations in part, if not in large part, because they find meaning in the work. And so we are grateful for the work of our staff as well. Grateful for you and all that you give, including your support of this congregation financially. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. Our reading this morning is by the Reverend Dr. Rebecca M. Parker. Rebecca Parker served for several years until relatively recently as the president of Star King Seminary, which is one of our Unitarian Universalist seminaries. And she's also one of our most treasured writers, especially about things theological. Why does it matter that women's reproductive choices be protected? Because we live in a broken world where life is at risk in many ways. The power to choose is the power of life in the midst of brokenness. Without choice, tragedy, impasse, and despair are the last word. With choice, creativity, responsibility, and possibility enter into the conversation. With choice, human beings enter into fuller personhood, becoming creative agents in the world who can transform life in the direction of greater justice, safety, and joy. A society in which human beings accept that life and death are in their hands is a better society. Embracing creativity and responsibility is a spiritual value that applies beyond the questions of pregnancy and childbirth. To know that we have choice is to know that life is not predetermined, that we do not simply have to comply with established structures, role patterns, or the dictates of despair. It is to know that we are not helpless in the face of overwhelming events. We all need the spiritual knowledge that life and death are in our hands, and we all need to do the hard work of ethical discernment, of accepting that they are ours to choose. Where there is choice, there is life. Where there is life, there is hope. Each of us bears the powers of holding on and letting go. And let me, before the interlude, just give a content warning about the sermon. It does include a personal story to do with childbearing and health care. And just if you think it would be upsetting for you to hear anything like that, don't feel bad about choosing to leave. During the summer of 1981, I worked as a law clerk for a scholar whose area was reproductive law at the Institute of Government at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. I spent a long summer reading case law bearing on Roe v. Wade, making my way through hundreds of pages of facts, legal theory, decisions, and dissent. And remember, Roe had been passed, 9 years earlier. The woman that I worked for, the scholar, was a good teacher, and during that time, I came to accept that in an imperfect world where things go wrong and things are complex and we don't have all the answers, Roe was a decent compromise on a difficult issue. Women could seek abortion under privacy until the fetus reached the point of viability or being able potentially to survive outside the womb. Never did I imagine how my own life would unfold in proximity to the issues I studied. In March of 1990, I was pregnant with my husband's and my first and only child, a child whom we very much wanted. Then at 6 months, I became ill with early onset preeclampsia, which is a serious and life-threatening disease in its severe form. Most people don't have the severe form. But it's caused by pregnancy itself, and the only answer is delivery. If the severe form progresses unchecked, it can end in seizure and death. For those of you who watched the early Downton Abbey series, that is what took Sybil's life after the birth of their child. I ended up in maternal intensive care with doctors, residents, fellows, nurses, and lab technicians moving in and out of my room, checking numbers, examining me, taking blood around the clock. They watched so that when either my life or that of the fetus was in real danger, they could deliver her. They hoped to delay the pregnancy for a month or two, if not more, but 5 days in, a doctor arrived in the early hours of the morning to say that my condition had deteriorated and that they would do a cesarean section in 3 hours. I don't know whether I felt more terror and grief or relief. That's how confusing such an experience is. But in a way, it didn't matter. Multiple times the neonatologist had told me that a child born at that stage was viable. Eventually, the legally trained part of my mind realized he was telling me the choice wasn't mine. I had passed the Roe v. Wade line, and it was up to them. I could not help in that time, though, to think about this and reflect on it and understand from inside how reasonable, caring, good people might come down on any side of what they thought should happen in that time. It's complex. Our daughter was born that morning weighing 1 pound and 2 ounces. And there followed 3 months in the hospital for her, 2 of them in intensive care, some crises, and slow improvement for me. In the long run, spoiler alert if you didn't already have it, the 3 of us were incredibly fortunate. She is now a vibrant 33-year-old woman who has both struggled and accomplished much. And of course, we are grateful that she is in our life. But my experience taught me, as I say, how complex decisions around pregnancy and health and life and death, or possible life and death, can be. And let me be clear, before and during this trauma, I was pro-choice. I remain pro-choice, though I understand how some people might not be, especially for themselves. But here's the thing. The events of those traumatic weeks plunged me personally between the lines and words and theories of the law, from ideas and ideologies into the lived experience behind the cases. Every hour of illness, every moment of fear or panic or hope were the real stuff over which ideologies and laws hover. And they are the stuff, the real stuff from which we in our collective responsibility try to create laws and guidelines. Since then, I will tell you that I have never heard any story of struggle in reproductive health without feeling it in my gut as well as my heart, and without wanting to tell the people involved that someone cares, to tell them in the reality of dilemmas and choices that they are accepted and loved. This has come home often of late. What has unfolded since Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization overturned Roe is about much more than abortion. The spiral of restrictions on women's health care reflects what it means when people struggle with really hard questions without compassion or respect for the people involved. It reveals the confusion and cruelty that result when the need for control by a few overpowers the will of the many. Since Dobbs, 24 states have restricted abortion drastically or banned it altogether. And the laws have ricocheted into life and death situations, including situations like the one that I was in. Even when exceptions for the mother's health are put into the words on the paper, there's no viable way to use them. Remember Kate Cox in Texas, when it became clear that the baby, she called it baby, she carried was not going to survive birth and her health could be severely compromised by carrying to term. Her doctor wanted to act, but first a court said she couldn't, then another said she could, then no, she couldn't. And in the end, Cox fled to another state for health care. In Oklahoma, an ill woman just in the past week or so was told nothing could be done until she crashed. But here's the problem. As I know too well, life and death decisions don't usually wait for attorneys to call in or courts to convene. They don't wait for backroom politics to coalesce or ballots to pass. They come to crisis often in a matter of hours or minutes, which is why a compassionate society, a society with compassion for all, recognizes that patients and doctors must make decisions. As Rebecca Parker writes, we live in a broken world where life is at risk in many ways. And my point isn't just about the choice and fate of individuals, of individual women. It's about the compassion that we as a society either do or do not practice with each other, and what that does to our souls. It's about whether we live with agape love or in a debilitating fear of other people's agency and decisions. In some states, doctors are being threatened with criminal prosecution or civil suits or bombs if they assist a patient even to save her life. And the risks are driving many out of practicing medicine, particularly reproductive medicine, women's health care in restrictive states. These professionals feel fear for their livelihood, their freedom, and their families. And it's a matter of compassion, too, for the partners of patients in those situations, the children They might already have the people who love them and try to live through agonizing times with them. What wondrous love. And consider this, most of the states that seriously prohibit or limit these choices are also the states where it's hard to get contraception, that have the highest infant mortality and maternal mortality rates, And they are the same states that refused the Medicaid expansion that would provide care for women before pregnancy and after pregnancy, especially women of color and other marginalized identities. At what point are these laws clearly no longer about opposing abortion, but about control? At what point do we need to ask how much more life and life-giving decisions we could support with an ethic of compassion for people who have to make hard decisions, to care for them, to understand? What would a more compassionate way look like? It would, of course, make it easier for childbearing people to get and use contraceptives. It would provide universal pre- and postpartum care for women who might bring children into the world, and for their care in other ways, care for the children themselves, and care needed years down the road because of the toll that childbearing can take on bodies. It would treat women-identified people with respect and take their symptoms seriously and their situations seriously. It would give them support to endure challenges, to consider all the possible options, and to make decisions with dignity and not out of fear and panic. It would accept that women are full human beings who do not need the good old boys in a state legislature or the power wielders of a patriarchal religion to decide whether we are worthy of agency in our own lives. In underlying it all theologically for us Unitarian Universalists is accepting courageously, even gladly, the responsibilities that come with having free will. Our tradition for hundreds of years has been about free will and choice, not predetermination. And yes, it's hard to live in a social universe, in a moral universe, where we make decisions. But it's more filled with possibility, as Rebecca Parker writes so eloquently. With choice, creativity, responsibility, and possibility enter the conversation. With choice, human beings enter into fuller personhood, becoming creative agents in the world who can transform life in the direction of greater justice, safety, and joy. Where there is choice, there is life. Where there is life, there is hope. Our theme this month has been liberating love, and in these trying times, might we not consider that if we value life, then showing love and respect to those who might bear life or not be our best way forward? Can love not align with freedom? Reverend Jen Crow calls us to it this way. Love can work its way into improbable and impossible situations. Like water over stone, it has the power to wear down our suffering, create new pathways of possibility, and support life in inhospitable terrain. Love can't fix every situation, but it does have a way of working on us and opening portals to our closed hearts. Love keeps us company, settling in beside the unlikely good or the unlikely bad that comes our way. I shared with you, I hope not too upsettingly, the trauma of my experience years ago, but there's another side to it. During those days of illness and anxiety, I had the comfort of knowing that my medical providers were empowered to do everything possible to care for me and the child I carried. I was surrounded by first-rate medical care, lucky, privileged me, with responsive providers who were able to focus on their work. And those people and many others in the hospital could show without looking over their shoulders or fearing reprisal the sympathy that they felt. It was a compassionate world, a difficult, painful but compassionate world, not just for me, but for the emotionally demanding work of being healthcare providers. And after Abby was born, the doctors and especially the nurses who cared for us and for her and for us when we came to see her twice every day became lifelines to hope. That compassion made all the difference to our surviving with our spirits intact. And it made all the difference to our healing. We live, my friends, in an imperfect world, in imperfect bodies. Our lives and our well-being dependent on other imperfect people. Let us at least do what we can to drive the meanness out of that world. Let us live into compassion, and as we do so, may love liberate us into our own most promising humanity. Would you rise in body and or spirit and join in singing number 131 in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. Those words by Eric Williams. Please be seated.